Live now look there at Vatican City, St. Peter's Square, and Catholics around the world are praying for Pope Francis to get better, to recover after he was taken to the hospital with some type of cardiac event, we're being told. Also, we're being told a possible respiratory infection that's not related to COVID-19. Well, earlier today, I spoke with J.D. Flynn. He's a reporter for The Pillar, which covers all things about the Catholic Church and the news there. Here's our conversation. And in our continuing coverage today, after learning that Pope Francis is being treated at a hospital in Rome for a pulmonary and respiratory infection. This is not COVID-19, according to the Vatican press office, but he's 86 years old. And now many, especially Catholics around the world, Vatican insiders, are worried about his health. Let's talk about this even further with J.D. Flynn from The Pillar, reporter and editor there. J.D., good to see you. Thanks so much for being with us. So my first question to you is, from those of you spoken to today, how worried are Vatican insiders right now about Francis's health?
Well, as you say, the Pope is 86 years old. He is in ill health on a couple of conditions. He's missing half a lung from an illness when he was young. He has had chronic intestinal problems over the past few years. He is suffering from knee problems and other problems. And so anytime you talk about someone who's in a condition like that, who then has either a serious respiratory infection or a cardiac event, there's room for concern. So I think people we talk to in the Vatican, take this seriously. Of course, you can never be exactly sure how this is going to play out. And anybody who has sort of dealt with the declining health of someone in their own family, an octogenarian in their own family, knows it's just really hard to predict what to expect. And so the Holy See is always ready. And at the same time, they've asked Catholics just to pray for the Pope and not to sort of anticipate too quickly, how serious things are.
Okay, but JD, what is a prognosis, if any? Have we heard how long he's going to be in the hospital?
Yeah. So the Vatican announced today, first that the Pope had gone to the hospital for some routine and previously scheduled tests. And then as more news began to leak out in the Italian media, the Vatican eventually said, well, the Pope's been diagnosed with a respiratory infection and he's going to be in the hospital for the next couple of days, and we've cleared his schedule. But Italian media and people we're talking to in the Vatican have all said, indeed, that it seems more likely that the Pope had some chest pain today after his Wednesday audience, that he was taken to the hospital by ambulance, and that while he does have a respiratory infection, it seems that there was some kind of a cardiac event, whether heart attack is the right word or not. There was some kind of a cardiac event which preceded his hospitalization. And so, the Holy See has not been especially forthcoming about that, which I think is probably pretty standard in a situation like this. And so we're still waiting to see. It's quite late in Rome now. We're still waiting to see whether there'll be an update from the Vatican press office tomorrow, whether there'll be an update from the hospital, or whether we'll just sort of be in a holding pattern.
Yeah, JD, this is a really inopportune time, especially with Palm Sunday this weekend, the next weekend, Easter. It's one of the busiest weekends, busiest times for Catholics around the world. It's very, very important. How does that impact the masses that are being held, how we celebrate Holy Week?
It is, Andrew, and I'm surprised that nobody told the Pope not to get sick right before Holy Week. I mean, that was just not especially convenient. He's going to have to find coverage for the masses and all those things. No, it's true. This is we're entering into the highest holy days of the Catholic Church's calendar, and the Pope, of course, plays a major role in the liturgies of Palm Sunday, the liturgies of Holy Week, and then Easter. And I would not expect that the Pope will be the principal celebrant of those liturgies, even if he comes home from the hospital in the next few days. I suspect that some of the more senior cardinals in the Vatican will lead those liturgies. Neither the Pope will, if he's able to, sit kind of off to the side, what we call in choir, but sit off to the side and participate in those liturgies, or that he'll observe them at home at the Casa Santa Marta, and other Vatican officials will lead them. Now, the Vatican hasn't said that at all, but just based upon the fact that he'll be hospitalized now and how taxing those masses can be, you're talking about hours and hours. I would not expect to see the Pope at Mass on Palm Sunday, and it would probably be a good sign of recovery if he was able to do the Mass of the Lord's Supper on Holy Thursday, or the Good Friday liturgies, and then the liturgies of leading into Easter and the Triduum.
JD, being in his late 80s, he's had a very, very busy travel schedule. It's almost, ramped up this year. He's gone on so many papal trips. Is that going to be affected by this? Does he have any upcoming?
Well, the Pope was just in sub-Saharan Africa, and he has been talking about some other trips that he plans to make in Europe in the months to come. But one of the issues that the Pope has is that he needs a knee replacement, and he's been reticent to get it. He had a major intestinal surgery 2 years ago, and he said that he had a very bad reaction to the anesthesia, and so he's reluctant to undergo general anesthesia. So I think that combined with this either respiratory illness or cardiac event probably will keep the Pope closer to home, which is what we saw, in the later years of the papacy of Pope St. John Paul II as well.
Yeah. Just lastly, JD, I want to talk about, if Francis's health gets really dire, and I think a lot of people are thinking right now, what is that going to look like? What is the protocol for succession in the event that a pope dies? Is there a short list, a long list of successors? Are there people waiting in the wings, if you will, or is this just left up to the College of Cardinals once they meet?
Right. When the Pope dies, and of course it's an inevitability for every Pope, and they tell him that on his first day in the job. When the Pope dies, the cardinals will gather, have a few days of meetings, have the Pope's funeral, and then they'll have the papal conclave where they're effectively locked inside the Sistine Chapel to deliberate about who should be the next Pope. And of course, there are always some front runners. There are always sort of rumors about which sort of faction of cardinals would prefer which candidate. But they also say that if you go in a candidate, you come out a cardinal. In other words, that conclaves are often unpredictable. And indeed, the conclave that elected Pope Francis was entirely unpredictable. He wasn't really on anybody's short list going in. It had to do with the deliberations inside. Cardinal Ratzinger, who became Benedict XVI, was a little bit more predictable, but John Paul II, who had a long papacy at the end of the 20th century, was a big surprise. Nobody would have anticipated that at all. So it's handicapping popes is a really tough business, Andrew. I'll tell you that.
All right, JD Flynn with The Pillar. We always appreciate your insight into these major stories, and we'll talk again. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Okay, back out live to Vatican City there. We thank JD Flynn for his reporting, but we will be monitoring Pope Francis's health. And of course, obviously, Palm Sunday is this weekend. That is not expected that he will basically preside over those masses of thousands of people in St. Peter's Square there.